Today we're going to look at ellipses, which is basically a circle. It's just not the same distance in each direction. So your formula is a little bit different. You're still going to have x squared plus y squared, but then you're going to have numbers on the bottom of your fractions. And those numbers just tell you how far out to go in each direction. So like if you had 25 under here, then you would go 5 in each direction on your x-axis. If you had 9 under your y, you would go 3 in each direction on your y-axis. That's all that this is telling you there. Is that okay? So they give you different formulas based on like which is bigger or like which axis is taller. I don't really think that's super important because it's the same idea every time, so I don't stress the two different formulas very much. But there they are in case you want them. What was I going to say? They give you a formula to find your C value, which helps you find your focus. I don't love this setup. I like using C squared equals A squared plus minus B squared better. A squared minus B squared. So that's the two numbers that are under your x squared and y squared. I think it's easier to use those and solve for C than vice versa because you're not given C. So anywho, that's the formula that I'm going to use to help us find C for all this stuff. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and do one. Is that all right? Any questions so far? Okay, cool. So we need to find the equation of an ellipse with a center at the origin, one focus at 3, 0, and a vertex at negative 4, 0. So our center is at the origin. We've got a focus at 3, 0. So 1, 2, 3, 0. So if you have a focus at 3, 0, you're also going to have a focus at negative 3, 0. That's just the way that ellipses work for us, so it's going to kind of mirror itself. We have one vertex at negative 4, 0. So negative 4, 0. So that means you have another vertex at positive 4, 0. Is that okay? So we know that it's going out 4 in the x direction. So that means when we go to write our function, you're going to have x squared over some number plus y squared over some number equals 1. It's always going to equal 1 for these. If it doesn't equal 1, then you're going to have to divide so that it does. So the number under x squared, we went 4 in the x direction. Does that make sense? Y'all kind of get what I'm saying by that? So then 4 squared is going to give you what? 16, so we'll put 16 under x. Is that okay? So they gave you your focus. So that tells us that our C value is 3. We know that A is 4 because we found that. So we've got to solve to find our other variable here. So we'll say that 3 squared equals 16, or 4 squared, however you want to write it. I'm just going to put 16 minus B squared. So 9 equals 16 minus B squared. So I'm going to add the B squared over and subtract the 9 so that we'll have B squared equals 5. So what does B equal? Square root 5. Is that okay? Because our focus was at 3, 0. So if your origin is at 0, the focus is at 3, you went out 3. That's your C value. Does that make any sense? I'll draw that right here so you can see it. I should have stopped right here. Let's have focus C. And then when it goes out all the way to your vertex, that's A. So do y'all have your purple sheet? I'm just going to show you right there because this is really small and it's hard to see there. But I think this is a better picture of it. So from your vertex, or sorry, from your center to your focus, that's your C value. So it illustrates it really well right there. And then all the way out to the vertex is going to be your A value. Does that make any sense? So as long as your center is at 0, 0, it's super easy to find. Even when they move that, you can just count the distance out. Does that make sense? Or do your distance formula. It should be like straight up and down though, so it shouldn't be on like a tilt or anything. So counting straight out should work for that as well. What's that? It's 7? Oh my gosh, I'm an idiot.
Genius.
I did that wrong on everyone. Like 15 times. Wonderful. So we're just going to change that to a 7 instead of 5. So we square root 7. Thanks for catching that. Man, I'm gonna have to go back and fix all my notes. That's okay. But does that make sense what I was saying with the C value? How to find that? Yes, no, maybe? So what, like, they told you your vertex was here. They told you your focus was at 3, 0. So the distance between 0, 0 and 3, 0 is what? 3. So your C is 3. Yeah? Is that okay? Alright. So that's that. That's where that came from. When you do the math correctly, you get 7. So then we're going to do square root of 7 squared under your y value. So we can just put 7 there. And that's our equation, and we're all done. We'll need to finish the graph, I guess. So what is the square root of 7 about?
2.4.
2.4? Is that what it is?
Yes.
Is that a guess or accurate? I think it's 2.6. So let's go up about 1, 2.6, and we'll go down 1, 2.6, wherever you think that is. And then you can sketch in your ellipse there. It's kind of like a circle, but it's not going to be the same direction. X, up, and does that make sense? Or is it the same? It's like stretched out one way. Egg, oval, football, if you can't draw well. Mine always end up looking a little pointy on the ends, but it's okay. Do you have any other questions right now? I think ellipses are a bit easier than the parabolas are, so hopefully this will be like a break from your brain today. So looking at the next one, we've got x squared over 25 plus y squared over 9 equals 1. So your center, as long as you've just got x squared plus y squared, it's always going to be at 0, 0, right? So do y'all remember for like the circles and the parabolas and stuff, they'll have like x minus something squared, y minus something squared. That shifts your center. That's not happening here, so we're still at 0, 0. And we can plot that as well. So since under the x is 25, so that means you're going to count out 5 in the x direction. Does that make sense? You just square root whatever that number is. So we'll go out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then under the y, we have 9. So how far do we need to count in the y direction? 3. So up 3, down 3. And then connect your dots. You'll have your little ellipse there. That okay? Easy to graph, right? Okay, so to get your focus, we've got to have that C value. So we'll say C squared equals, it's your A squared plus B squared. So we can just say 25 plus 9. 34. Minus, 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 not plus, minus. And when you minus, what do you get? 16, so C squared equals 16, so C is what? 4. Technically we get plus and minus 4, right? So for your parabola, you just had one focus because you had like the one curve and it's just inside there. For your ellipses, you're going to have 2, so that's why like the plus and minus 4 are important. So while you're doing the parabolas, it was a little bit confusing as far as like when do we add it, when do we subtract it? Well, you're going to do both here, okay? So it's going to be on the longer side, the longer axis. Does that make sense? So since ours is longer along the x, we're going to add these numbers to the x from the center. Does that make sense? So for your focus, you'll have positive 4, 0, and you'll have negative 4, 0. Is that okay? Do we need to graph them? We can. So if you'll have positive 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, and negative 4, 0, those are just points in there. And then for your vertices, I think they typically only want the ones that are on like your major axis, so the longer side. So that would be right here, which was positive 5, 0, and negative 5, 0. So 5, 0, and negative 5, 0. Basically, so like I usually put these as well, but I think if they ask you for the vertices, they just want these. But it's also like depends on the book, it depends on who's asking. So Do y'all want to put all of them or just the major vertices? Just major? Okay, so just know that your major ones are the ones on the longer side. So for this one, it's your x's. And then if it wanted like all possible vertices, then you would write the y's as well. But I think those are fairly easy to find. Yeah? Okay. So like for all this stuff, I think it's easier to graph it and then write your points more than to like remember rules and add numbers and subtract numbers. I just think it's easier to graph it. Do you have any questions right now? Is there anything that we're not quite sure about, don't quite understand? Okay, so looking at the next one, we've got 9x squared plus y squared equals 9. What's the problem with that equation? Doesn't equal 1. So anytime you've got an ellipse or a hyperbola, what we're doing tomorrow as well, it's got to equal 1. So how could we make this equal 1? So divide by 9. So then that's going to give you x squared. I'm going to put over 1 because it's got to be over something. And then y squared will stay over 9. And the whole thing now equals 1. Is that all right? Questions? Yeah, you got to let me know if you don't understand, because clearly we did not understand what parabolas and we didn't say anything. So y'all have to talk to me. You got to let me know what's going on. Do we have questions? So where is your center going to be this time? Since we got just x squared, just y squared. Set the origin, so 0, 0. So at this point, I think it's easier to go ahead and graph it. So let's do that. So we'll go ahead and put our center 0, 0. In the x direction, what's the square root of 1? So how far do we need to go out on the x-axis? 1. And then under the y, we have 9. So square root of 9 gives you 3. So how far do you need to go in the y direction? 3. So go up 3 and down 3. We can connect those and you're all graphed. So to find your c value, we're going to do that. C squared equals a squared minus b squared. I don't care a whole lot which is a and b. You just need to make sure that you're doing the bigger one minus the smaller one, because you can't take the square root of a negative number. Do you agree? So that's why they switched the a's and the b's up here, so that they can use this formula every single time. But as long as you do the big minus the small, it's going to work out for you, okay? So I'm going to write that in there. Might be a bad idea for you to write that as well. So we're going to say c squared equals, which is bigger, 9 or 1. So 9 minus 1. Is that okay? Because I already squared down there in our denominator. So 9 minus 1 gives you 8. So we could say that c equals the square root of 8. They may like simplify that a little bit and write it as 2 square root 2. Are we okay with where that came from? Yes, no, maybe? Questions? Are we okay with solving? We're good with how we got C? Okay. So to find your focus, we're going to be going in the y's directions this time because that's taller. It's taller along the y-axis than it is the x-axis, so that's where we're going to go for that. So you're just adding, sorry, we do have plus and minuses here. You'll add and subtract to your center these numbers. So we'll have 0 plus 2 square root 2, so just 2 square root 2. Flip that, I heard it backwards. 0, comma 2 square root 2, because we're going in the y direction this time instead of the x direction. And then we'll have 0, negative 2 square root 2. Is that okay? So it's on the y's this time. Why? Why do we put it in y? Because that's your longer side, yeah? So for your vertices, again, we're going to do like the major vertices. So the ones on the longer side, those are your positive 3 and negative 3. Is that okay? So we'll have 0, 3 and 0, negative 3. And that's it. Questions? So we're totally good on the front and everything we've done so far. Alright, so next one. We have an equation of an ellipse that has one focus at 0, 2. So I'm going to go ahead and plot that. So at 0, 2, vertices at 0, negative 3, and 0, 3. 1, 2, 3. So where is our origin probably going to be? 0, 0. And one way to think about that, if you're not quite sure, if your vertices are at 0, negative 3, and 0, 3, split the distance. What's in the middle? 0, 0. Yeah? So our center is at 0, 0. So I'm going to put that there. I'll write it below here. Did I do that? Sorry. Flip all this on the y-axis instead. Nope. I just can't grasp. It is one of those days, man. Alright. Let me get that out of here. Okay. So 0, 2. And 0, 3, and negative 3. So you're going to have another focus at 0, negative 2. Is that okay? So let's see. Since the taller side is the y side, we can go ahead and write most of our equation. We know it's going to be x squared over something plus y squared over something equals 1. We didn't have to change the x squared or y squared because your center is at 0, 0. And how far did we go in the y direction to get to our vertices there? 3. So what needs to be under y? 9, because you got to square that. Is that okay? We've got to figure out how far we went in the x direction now. So they gave you the focus, which is your c value. So what is your c value? C equals 2, right? Because however far out from the center you are. So we could say that 2 squared equals, it's going to be 3 squared, because this is the taller side, minus b squared. Is that alright? Yes, no, maybe? Okay, so I'm going to add the b squared over and subtract 4, so we'll have b squared equals 5, for real this time, so b equals square root 5. Plus or minus? Well, just 5. So then under your x squared, when you square the square root of 5, you get 5. Is that okay? Alright. So there's that. So what is the square root of 5? About 2.2-ish, just a little over 2. So then we can graph that. A little over 2 would be about here, and a little over 2 would be about here. Connect your dots and you'll have your ellipse. Questions? So for the next ones, it's all the same idea, you just have a different center now. So especially when your center is not at 0, I think it's easier to graph it and then find all your points. So we're going to go from there. So here's like all the formulas and stuff again. I think it's a lot to memorize, so as long as you just know what to do, you'll be fine. So for the first one, we've got an equation with a center at 2, negative 3. So I'm going to go ahead and plot that. We're at 2, negative 3. I hope that's in the correct direction, right? One focus is at 3, negative 3, and then one vertex is at 5, negative 3. So we've got a focus at 3, negative 3, and a vertex at 5, negative 3. So if we have a vertex at 5, negative 3, that took us 3 blocks out from your center. Does that make sense? So you would count 3 blocks the other direction to get your other vertex. Yeah? So we went 1, 2, 3, so I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. And your focus was one block this direction, so I'll take it one block that direction. That will give us our other focus. So how far away was your focus from the center? How many blocks from the center to the focus? It was 1 block. So that means your C value is 1. And how many blocks away was the vertex from your center? 3. So that means your A value is 3. So you're going to have to solve to find your B. So since they give you your vertex, that means that the x side is the longer side. So we could say 1 squared equals 3 squared minus b squared. Okay? So add the b over, subtract the 1, you're going to have b squared equals 8. Right? Because 9 minus 1 is 8. Is that okay? So then b is going to be 2 square root 2 again. Or you could just leave that as plus or minus 8 because we're going to square it, so it might be easier to leave it as square root 8. So we need to write our equation now. So since they have shifted your center, it's not a 0, 0, we're going to have to take that into consideration when we write it. So for the x part, what are you going to have? Minus 2 squared. And then how far did we go in the x direction? We went 3, so on the bottom you should have 3 squared, which is 9. Then we're going to have plus for the y's at your center. What do we need to have? Y plus 3. All that is squared on the bottom. Our b value is square root 8. So when you square that, what do you get? 8. And the whole thing's got to equal what? 1. That's your equation. We can finish our graph. The square root of 8 is about what? Is it about 2.6? I thought that was square root 7. That's probably not far off. 2.8. So we'll go 1 2.8 and 1 2.8. That's a really ugly ellipse, but that's okay. Questions there? Is there anything that we're not sure about or don't understand? Alright, so for the next one, we need to analyze and graph this. So what is wrong with this equation right now? Well, it doesn't equal 1. Problem number 1. And then what should we probably do to get this to look a little bit more like these guys? Complete the square. It's a common theme for all of these. Anytime you got a conic section, you probably need to complete the square. So I would get your x's and y's together and then move the constant over as well. So I'm going to have 4x squared and negative 8x plus y squared plus 4y equals negative 4. So that's my step 1. Get x's together, get y's together, move your constant to the other side. Before we can complete the square, we need to take out a GCF. So for your x's, what's your GCF? 4. So we'll pull that out. That's going to leave you with x squared minus 2x. What do we need to add in there to complete the square? 2 divided by 2. Square that, you get 1, so add 1. Now when we go to add that to the other side, it was really 4 times 1. So what do we need to add on the other side of our equal sign? 4. I'm going to leave some space so we have that negative 4, and I'm going to add the 4 that we just added in here. So then we're going to complete the square with our y's. So there's no GCF to pull out there. You're going to have y squared plus 4y, and 4 divided by 2 gives you what? 2. Square that and you get 4. So add 4 here as well. And add 4 to the other side to balance it out. Is that okay? Alright, so then with your x's, you're going to have 4, and then that's factoring into what? X minus 1 all squared. And then for the y's, what does that factor into? Plus 2 all squared. And negative 4 plus 4 is 0. Then you have 4 left over. What is wrong now? Doesn't equal 1. So how are we going to get that equal to 1? Divide everything by 4. So we're going to have x minus 1 all squared. I'm going to put it over 1 because I think it's helpful to have something there. And then the y plus 2 is all over 4. And the whole thing equals 1. Are we good with all that? Okay, where's your center? 1, negative 2. Change the signs. Yeah. So we can go ahead and plot that. 1, negative 2. Now, how far do we need to go in the x direction? I think it's easy to go ahead and graph first. It's the square root of 1. 1, so go 1 block in the x direction. And then what's the square root of 4? So we'll go 2 blocks in the y directions. So your vertices, those are super easy. It's the taller sides. Where are our vertices at? What's the top one? 1, 0. And what's the bottom one? 1, negative 4. Is that okay? Alright, so then your focus, to find that, you need your c value. So we're going to use that c squared equals a squared minus b squared. So just make sure that you do the bigger minus the smaller. So we'll have 4 minus 1, and 4 minus 1 gives you 3. Square root that. C will be square root of 3. Is that okay? Technically it's going to be plus and minus, right? So when you're finding your focus, you're going to add this number to your center. Okay? Are we going to be adding to the x value or the y value?
Y.
Why is it the y value? That's your longer side. Is that okay? So when you write this, you don't have to get super fancy with it. We can just say 1, negative 2 plus square root 3. And then for our other focus, where's it going to be? 1, negative 2 minus square root 3. And you can plot this if you want. I think it's small, so don't worry about it. And that's it. Questions?
Why did you put negative 2?
Because that was the y value at your center. So we're adding and subtracting that number to your center, whatever your focus is. Is that okay? Any other questions right now? Okay. We all right? So we've got one more. Do we want to do this?
You show us that video.
Yeah. So this is talking about that Whispering Gallery in the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. It's 47.3 feet long, so that's all the way across. The distance from the center of the room to the focus is 20.3 feet. Find an equation that describes the shape of the room, and then how high is it at its center. So I think it's helpful to have a picture here, so I'm going to draw one. All the way across the room is 47.3. From the center to the focus is 20.3. So if we're going to write an equation for this, it says that the center is probably just going to be 0, 0, because it doesn't tell you anything otherwise. So most of the time for like real life stuff, unless they tell you a specific center, 0, 0 is fine to assume. So we'll say x squared over something plus y squared over something is supposed to equal 1. So we know that all the way across was 47.3. So how could we find just halfway? divide by 2, square that, put it under the x, right? So what is 47.3 divided by 2? So 23.65 squared under there. Is that okay? The whole way across was 47.3. So we just divided by 2 to get halfway. Is that all right? Yes? No? So it's 23.65. I'll write it over here. 23 point. I can't even write numbers. 23.65. That's halfway across. So then they told you to this focus was 20.3. So that is your C value. So we could set up 20.3 squared equals 23.65 squared minus B squared. Solve for that B. And that's going to tell you the height of the room, or the number that we need to put under the Y. So I would do this minus that in your calculator, and you get some big long decimal. I got 147.233. Is that what y'all got? Sure. 147.233. So then B equals, it's about 12.13 when you take the square root there. So when we go write that in our formula over here, we'll just do 12.13 squared under the Y. And it wanted to know the height of the room at the center, so that's just about 12.13. Questions on that? So I think ellipses are a little bit easier. Do y'all feel that way yet, or no? No? Okay. Well, they're a little bit easier than parabolas, whether you believe it or not. So I've got like the same little task cards as yesterday. So if y'all want to take pictures of that, and then I'll pull up the video so you can see what a whispering room is. Because it is pretty cool.